So we're gonna get us started. Since we are moving across campus, right, they'll be kind of quick in going, so we appreciate all of you to kind of follow along with the crew. Amanda Witterbort from the Brown Center for Leadership and Service. I just wanted to share a little bit about our goals for today, because we are a collective of office and areas that we're trying to weave our skills together, right, in our communities to share a little bit about the history that we don't always get in other spaces. Additionally, with the Storytellers came from the Presidential Task Force, which Alex, right here, if you raise your hand, help talk to people across campus about, because there's so many places we could go, right? And so this is a very limited just piece of the story. And then we really want to humanize institutions, to think that we can just say UF is this or that, but we make up UF. And there are people that have done work and continue to do work to resist and to show each other care. So the last one is we just hope you connect with each other throughout this time. And again, at the end, we will have some food and a little more informal space to connect. So I'm going to pass it to Anna so she can kick us off to the Storytellers.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Hamilton. I am the Assistant Director at the Sam Proctor Oral History Program over in Pugh Hall. Welcome to your first stop on today's tour. So just a quick note about the Sam Proctor Program. We were founded in 1967. We are very much a social justice spirited organization. Our mission is one community, many voices. We have over 8,000 interviews in our collections, which are made available to you via the University of Florida Digital Collections. So I discover a new project every day that fall into our archives, and I encourage you to check them out. At SPOP, we very much believe that personal stories and testimony and storytelling are life-changing and world-building. And so it's in this spirit that we are pleased to join you here today. In February of last year, we responded to, along with our partners at Smathers Libraries, a suite of legislation. You may be familiar with the Stop Woke Act. And many other laws that are geared towards curtailing the teaching of histories of communities that have been historically marginalized or disenfranchised and discriminated against. So I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to leave the good stuff to my colleagues, Adolfho Romero, who's a project coordinator at SPOP, and Michelle Nolan, who's the chemical sciences librarian here at Marston. So thank you all very much for being our storytellers here.
I'm going to start. All right, hi everybody. So yes, as it was mentioned, I'm one of the librarians here at Marston, and in February we basically had a large teach-in that took place here. And what was really powerful about this teach-in was that it was a collaboration between students speaking out on behalf of fellow students, faculty standing up for students' right to learn, and all of these different factors that came together. So the immediate thing that precipitated the teach-in here was amongst all of the other things that have been happening in the Florida legislature that year, Governor Ron DeSantis had recently spoken out about banning the AP African American History program in the state of Florida. And after that happened in Florida, there was actually a sort of larger crisis where the AP board decided to censor that course as well. So while that was happening, a statewide organization called the Dream Defenders called for a statewide day of action to learn, teach, and speak out about Black history. So basically here at the library, I had gotten in contact with Dr. Paul Ortiz to see if there was anything locally being planned at the University of Florida. And there were some loose ideas. There were some students who were interested in doing something, but it hadn't quite come together yet. So my proposal, because so much of this aligns with the core values of librarianship, especially when it comes to book bannings, intellectual freedom, teaching Black history, giving students an empowering space, was to use the main floor in Marston. So it kind of started to come together at that point. Basically, we sort of use the power that we have in different ways, where the faculty sort of sponsored a Black History Month teach-in and made it an official event, but the students created all of the content, invited the speakers, developed the entire program. So in some sense, The event happened because it was sort of framed as a faculty-sponsored thing, but none of the faculty could be on the hook with the state about any of the content because the students created it. So there was sort of this play where both of us used the different types of institutional power we have to have a really powerful event. Anything you want to add about that?
Sure, thank you so much, Michelle. So just before I even begin diving in, please grab some of these booklets. This is one of many battles that students, faculty have fought together against fighting for their academic freedoms. So just to begin a little bit, provide a little bit more in-depth detail, we have HB 99, which pretty much banned critical race theory from being taught in academia at the university level as well as gender studies. So what does that mean? You know, how do we tell people why is it important? How do we promote that and show that? And so what we decided is to do this teach-in. And we spent, it took us around a week to plan this teach-in. And that involved, like Michelle mentioned, it involved staff, faculty. We try to do it and talk to different departments to come together, unite, and tell as many students as we could throughout campus, hey, this is happening. But just to mention, this would not be possible without students like yourselves, faculty like yourselves out here. So we're very thankful that everybody was able to come in. And we're still battling the fight. It's the truth. It doesn't end here, but what I want to leave you with is that there's many battles that have happened at UF, but if students get involved, if faculty get involved, change could occur. And I think doing this teaching that it effectively showcased that. And if you ever want to learn how to, we came more in depth on how to create that, we have a teaching booklet right here in the front. It talks about how to put it together. That means uniting with departments, thinking about venues, thinking about the logistical components, which, you know, you see a lot of public programs out there, but how do you go about it? So now you have the tools to create one. And I hope this is not the end in the sense of how we go about like creating this student-led faculty teaching movements. I hope they keep happening because we need to promote and showcase how we're using academia, what academia is teaching us, and the importance of academia. And the way to do that is to have events such as even where we're at right now. You're going to be listening to many stories. You're going to be listening about different movements that have happened throughout the university and spaces. So I just want you to think about those spaces, learn about the history of your own university, because at the end of the day, we are all here. This is a land-grant university built on Native American land, you know, we're stepping on. What I would recommend, if you see this QR code right here, scan that. It's a 100-page booklet that talks about the history of UF more in depth. Take your time, check it out, read it. You'll learn a lot of things, I promise you.
It's true. And the only other thing I'll add, since you all are here and you're interested, and I'm sure you're just brimming with excitement to create something else, is that students have the most power out of anybody at this university. So when students organize, you can demand anything you want. You can change this place. It's yours. So.
Yes, like I mentioned, the booklets are here. If you want to know what other programs are out there or other parts of the tour you're going to be going towards, feel free to grab some of the booklets. And if you want to learn a little bit more in depth about what we do at the Samuel Proctor and other, this is one of 10 events that we created at the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. So you could just imagine how busy we were while doing this whole entire teaching just in a 1 week putting it together. So I'll tell you, it was a challenge, but it was not impossible. And the only reason it was not impossible is because everybody worked together to pick up their own parts, whether it's the libraries, whether it's the Samuel Proctor, Dream Defenders, they all contributed together. And I think what I want you to take out of all this, work collectively, because collectively you bring much more power.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. I'll let you go off. I think you're still good on time, but yeah, safe walk to your next stop. And if you have questions, we'll be here for a couple minutes. Okay?
And make friends with your librarians.
Librarians. To find out more of the resources, library resources and Samuel Proctor.
So if you're new to this is like the tour guide for the spots that we're going to, as well as some of the resources on the back. We are going to follow Alex. Will you raise your hand? Alex knows lots of things. Anna, raise your hand. Anna knows lots of things. Kevin, raise your hand. And MA right there. So if you could follow all of them towards Plaza, and that's where we're going to go for our next stop. If you have a few questions, like I said, they're here on the way, and I'll kind of hang at the end to make sure that we get everyone. So towards Plaza we go.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good go. 1, 2.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you all. This is like
thank you.
perfect setup too, yeah.
I work at the George A. Smathers Libraries. So my office is, we were standing in front of Michelle's office earlier. My office is in that building right over there, Smathers Libraries. So I'm here to talk to you guys today about the history of the Plaza of the Americas and all of the events related to student protests and student movements that have happened here at the Plaza. Now, there's been a lot that has happened here at the Plaza, as I'm sure all of you guys see when you're walking around campus. This is a busy, 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 busy place. So I can't cover every single event. So I'm going to kind of pick a couple of highlights from the 60s and 70s that really empower the message that Michelle was giving you all, which is your voices matter. And if you guys put your voices together and you fight for change and you make demands of what you want, you can affect change here on campus. So just a really, really quick little bit of history of the Plaza. So this was actually one of the entrances to the university. Library West was not here. Library West was not built until 1967. So this area was a big, open, empty field. And in 1925, there was a landscape plan that was created to basically celebrate the first Latin American conference that was held here on campus. So they planted trees in honor of all of the countries that were represented at this particular conference. And all of those trees are still here, except for Canada and the US, which is where Library West is now. So they had to cut down the Canadian and US trees. But all of the other countries' trees are still represented here. And we do have a map in the University Archives if you want to see where each country's tree is located on the plaza. But this has always been a gathering space for students. Before it was a gathering place for students and they started like renovating it, it was kind of like a cow pasture because they used to have all of the agricultural college fields out here and also the cows. So if you can imagine, this used to have cows on it. But what I want to skip ahead to, now that you know a little tiny bit about how this area was formed, I want to skip ahead now to the 1960s and the Vietnam War era, because these were three really, really historically significant events that happened here in the plaza that started to affect change. The first one was held in October of 1969. It was called the Moratorium Day for the Vietnam War. It was a nationwide movement to peacefully protest the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. So about 1,500 students gathered here on the plaza and basically sat around and sang songs and peacefully protested the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. It was a very peaceful protest. There was no riots, nothing like sometimes happened on some other college campuses during this time period. Let's skip ahead a little bit now to 1970, where there was another protest here on the plaza, again about the Vietnam War. This one ended up being a little bit more involved. It basically evolved into the students going on strike. So they demanded that the university cancel classes. They said students will not attend classes until you meet our demands, one of which was de-arming the campus police, one of which was basically dismantling the ROTC program, which was up until very recently at that time a requirement for all male students on this campus and many other land-grant institutions across the country. But they also took over Walker Auditorium. They went in, they sat down, and they refused to leave. They actually interrupted a professor in his class. And they came in, they sat down, and said, we're not leaving until we get these demands met. So President O'Connell basically came in and said, all right, fine, we'll cancel classes for a couple of days. And that resolved the strike at that point. We're going to skip ahead another year to 1971, April 15th, 1971, which is now known as Black Thursday here on campus. This event actually started in Taggart Hall, which is that way, facing 13th Street. You guys didn't have time to stop there today, so I'm going to talk about how it started there and then moved here to the Plaza. So Black Thursday was brought about by some demands from the Black Student Union. They wanted more Black students on this campus. Of the 20,000 who were attending UF in 1971, only about 350 were Black. They also wanted more Black administrators, Black faculty, more recruitment of said Black administrators and Black faculty, among other demands that they were making. So members of the Black Student Union took these demands to President O'Connell's office, demanded to meet with him. He said, "I'm not meeting with you unless you have an appointment." He kicked them out, threatened them with arrest if they didn't leave, so they left. They came back again about 20 minutes later with a larger group. They were rebuffed again by President O'Connell, and then finally they came back with a third group, and this time they sat down in Tigert Hall on the second floor in front of the president's office and occupied the office and refused to leave. And it spilled out down the steps of Tigert Hall. When they finally were allowed to voice their concerns to the president, basically he said, "You need to schedule an appointment with me. I'm not talking about this anymore." So the students then got up from Tigert Hall after they were threatened with arrest. Many of them were arrested. There were about 72 students who were arrested because they refused to leave Tigert Hall. After the arrests were made, many of the students who were left or who'd been hearing about these events happening on campus then started to gather here in the Plaza for a protest. So there were many speeches made. There were lots of protests here on the campus. In the Plaza, they eventually ended up marching over to the president's house, which is over by the law school, just to give you an idea of how far they walked to get over there. But the events of Black Thursday brought about a really seminal turning point in the history of this particular campus. After the events of Black Thursday, many of the demands of the Black Student Union were met. There was an increased effort to recruit Black faculty and administrators. There was a much more greater effort to enroll Black students. And so that is one example of how your voices can affect change here. The last thing I'm going to talk about, make sure I have enough time. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Last one I'm going to talk about is also related to Vietnam. This was the riots that happened in 1972. So these were the violent ones. And you may or may not have heard about these if your folks went here on campus in the 70s. But basically, in 1972, President Nixon announced that he was going to bomb North Vietnam cities, and the students across the country rose up in protest. Kent State had happened in 1970, and that one was a big protest. The ones in 1972, after announcing this bombing, were even bigger. So again, the students went and occupied Tigert Hall. They spilled out onto 13th Street and actually closed the street down. The university brought in the National Guard and the police. There were violent riots on this campus out on 13th Street in front of Tigert Hall, all the way down to University Avenue. These riots took place over several days, but in the daytime, when the students were not out occupying 13th Street, they were here in the Plaza. And one of the events that helped to essentially quell the riots was a teleconference call that they did here on the Plaza. They hosted it here on the Plaza. They did a video conference call, essentially, with some of our Florida senators and representatives in Washington, D.C. So the student body vice president flew out to Washington, D.C. overnight on the second day of the riots, and there was that conference call where the senators and representatives actually addressed the students, answered their questions. It came one of the famous sayings, Lawton Chiles saying, "How can a man who holds a rock in his hand say that he wants peace?" That quotation was said during this particular teleconference call. So again, there were a lot of things that the U.S. students demanded during these particular riots, some of which were answered, many of which were not. But again, it was a great way for students to show their dissatisfaction and to effect change on campus. So those are the events that I had planned on talking about. I have, I think, a couple of minutes if anybody has a quick question for me? Oh, I have a good amount of time. Perfect. I can take questions. Yell, or I'll come bring you the microphone. One of the two. Don't be afraid. I don't bite. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I ask stupid questions. You guys don't. Nobody has any questions for me? Cool. Go for it.
I would say that, right, time has changed a lot of how people do things in the world in general, and so that would include like organizing. So I guess advice or thoughts on today, some responses or some ways in which students can use their power.
Excellent question. So I'm sure that many of you guys have heard of petitions that go around every so often through change.org. Usually they are for trying to rename the J. Wainwright Student Union instead of having it named after President Wrights. Petitions are great. Participating in student government is great. That is one way that you can use your voice, whether you run for a position or to be a senator, or whether you just vote in student government elections. But I'm going to expand that out now to vote in all of your elections. Vote in your local elections. Vote in federal elections. Vote, 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 vote. That is one way that you can make your voice heard. Write editorials, start social movement hashtags. You know, you have a lot of tools available to you guys now that were not available back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s and the early 2000s. You guys have the internet. You guys have social media. Use it wisely and responsibly. Don't go, spreading around false information because that will discredit your movement faster than you can think. But use those tools to make your voice heard. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid. If you have a strong conviction, speak out against it or for it, depending upon what that conviction is. Donate to organizations that support your worldview. Yeah.
Why do students want to change the name of the Wrights?
Why do students want to change the name of the J. Wainwright's Union? That's an excellent question. So J. Wainwright's was president of this university from 1955 to 1962. I can never remember the exact dates. So if you know anything about U.S. and Florida history during the late 50s, early 60s, you can probably guess why some of the reasons the students want to rename the J. Wainwright's Union. One of the major reasons is due to something called the Johns Committee, the Florida Legislative Investigation Committee, which President Wrights invited onto this campus in the late 1950s. I believe it was 1958. The Johns Committee started in the earlier 50s as a response to the Red Wave and McCarthyism. They were trying to basically find the communists across state universities and state legislative bodies. And when Charlie Johns, the senator who founded that committee, didn't find any communists, he wanted to hold on to his power, so he formed reformed the Johns Committee into stamping out, and I'm going to use the language of the time, stamp out the homosexuals in the colleges and universities in this state. So they went to the University of South Florida, they went to several other universities, UCF and UF here. President Wright specifically invited them here first. President Wright is quoted as saying something along the lines of, Senator Johns was bound and determined to find and root out the homosexual activity on this campus, and by God, he was going to do it. I would highly encourage you all to look up the Johns Committee. There is an excellent overview of it on Wikipedia. There is an excellent documentary that you can find as well, available online, called Behind Closed Doors, which talks about the student experience here at UF for the students and faculty who were basically sometimes falsely accused or were harassed, hounded, yanked out of classes by police with no attorney present, no nothing, and forcibly questioned. That's one of the major reasons. Yeah. Do I have time for any other questions? Any other questions? Hang on. part the waves, part the waves.
Thank you. What's the origin of the Plaza of America? Why it gained such a name?
That is a great question. So why is the Plaza of the Americas called the Plaza of the Americas? So as I mentioned at the very beginning of this area was a grass field basically until 1921. There was a international conference held here at UF that was celebrating Latin American countries, so North America, Central America, South America. So around this plaza here, there are trees representing the countries that were here at that particular conference. So that is why it is now named the Plaza of the Americas, because this is celebrating North, Central, and South America and the connection that we have here. Incidentally, in 1931, because of this conference that was held here at UF, President Tigert then essentially said, okay, let's foster this relationship. So he started what was called the Institute of Inter-American Studies, which is now the Center for Latin American Studies here on campus. Any other questions before I release you all to go over to the Casita and Institute for Black Culture? Thank you all very much for listening to me babble at you. If you guys ever have questions about UF history, my email is on the back of that blue trifold pamphlet that you guys have. So just ask. I'm happy to share things. We have lots of photos and things online. I will also tell you we have the alligator completely available online for free that you can search. So it's a great resource. Thanks, guys.
I can leave it on.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted Alex, who really helped project lead across the centers, to put this together about how some of the sites got chosen. And then Sona is going to share about one of the groups, which is Path to Purpose in BCLS. And then we'll move to the next.
Yeah, so I was asked to share about my thought process and kind of like choosing these sites and hearing about suggestions. So for example, Plaza was suggested to me as a tour stop by one of the MFOS staff members over at the Rights Union, which I thought was a wonderful idea. It'd be great as like a midsection, and then IBC and La Casita, as well as Marston, were selected using, I think Anna mentioned it earlier, when we were over at Marston, the Presidential Task Force, which was created just as a way of like documenting the history of these different movements and the history of UF. So like we've said before, that's a really great resource if you want to get started. And yeah, that was essentially how I chose the spots. And I think every building and every place at UF has such a rich history. So anywhere you look and you can just do like an internet search, there's always like a story to be told.
Yeah, and then Sona is going to come share about Path to Purpose and why we think this is important to do in the first place.
Hey everyone, my name's Sonai. I know we have a lot of people here, but I lead a group called Path to Purpose. Can the Path to Purpose fellows raise your hands? Yeah, we got a lot of y'all. But I am the student director of Path to Purpose, and I work at the Brown Center for Leadership and Service, which essentially we are Gators for Good, and we do a lot of service work, trying to bridge that gap between students in the Gainesville community. And we did this walking tour purposefully. With Path to Purpose is a social change fellowship, so often you're here for 4 years, however long you're here, and then you often leave Gainesville without really understanding the community around you and just your UF bubble. And so we created Path to Purpose as a way to get students to work with community members across Gainesville, so that way there's a more a stronger connection and taking you from volunteers to like sustainable community partners. But along with that, we thought that a walking tour would be helpful because yes, we've all been to Plaza of the Americas, but we don't really know why it's here. Same thing with IBC and La Casita. We want to like give that input of the history and why it's so important to be on this ground. And also like, I feel like knowing history by going forward, you can know what to do and what not to do. And also use your voice, you're a student, so we want to encourage you to be knowledgeable and go forward with that. So yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of Path to Purpose in multiple of the programs here, our time is really spent thinking about how to be connected to Gainesville communities and how to be outside of that UF bubble. But what I found in the last few years is that when students would meet all the guest speakers who are amazing organizers across Gainesville, there was like this dissonance that was like, well, I'm not that age, or I'm not from this community, or I don't have 20 years of doing this, and assuming that without that experience or those identities that we can't make change. And so we wanted to be clear that like a lot of change in this country has happened from student movements, and of course in solidarity and alliance and organization with other coalitions across areas, but that we all have differing power, as Michelle mentioned. And so thinking through like the people in this group, maybe people you're able to organize with. And then the last note too, people also seem frustrated at our end of last year and thinking about some of the things maybe that have happened on campus more recently where people have mobilized and maybe had a protest or did individual actions. But individual actions and mobilizing is not the same thing as organizing. Organizing takes time, building power, and thinking through more than only the social media or only a physical act. And so we together can play those different roles, and we wanted today to be a space for you all to do that and meet each other. So we're gonna be walking to IBC and Casita following Alex. I'm still gonna encourage you to make a new friend along the way. Bold choice, I believe in you. Thank you.
Students are being very like tired, sick, done, you know? Yeah. This is a really good thing.
Yeah, I know. I like it. You can learn about it, you know, like even here in Noll, I was in Miami, I never really learned history.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no reason how are you gonna learn it.
You learn different pieces if something happens.
Yeah,
And then you might.
But at least here, like, you know, they have the opportunity.
Yeah, I was glad that some of these health places start to think why they're really crazy. Like, in that position, especially.
All right, hello everyone. How's your day going? It's going good. Okay, it's a little cold today, so I know the vibes are a little bit different. So, welcome to the IBC. So it stands for the Institute of Black Culture, as you might have seen outside on the sign. So the Institute of Black Culture falls under the Office of Black Student Engagement within the Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement. So in the Office of Black Student Engagement, the BSC aims to create, sustain, promote, and affirm Black scholarship, culture, history, and leadership. So has anybody heard of the CIME on campus or? Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to be giving like a brief tour of the building. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I wasn't expecting to
Such a big crew, yeah. So we think about,
it really is.
All
yeah.
family and friends, informal. We just want to know about why this space matters. So anything you say, we support.
Yeah, definitely. The building has a lot of significance. So usually for tours, we like to start at the very front, but because there's so many people, you know, you can just take your time. If you get a chance, you can come back up to the front. We have a mural up here of the old IBC house. So, you know, just take a nice look at that on your way out, or if you just want to explore a little bit after the tour. But we can start right here. So here is the beacon, and as you see, we have this lovely mural that we just got this year. But the beacon is, you know, we call it this because of the lights, and it was placed here intentionally to signify home, giving students a sense of home here in the space. And as you can see here, some students are sitting in our classroom. So in past semesters, we have had courses held here, so they can come in, close the air walls, and have like actual lectures in there. And the projector is kind of out of order right now, but usually we, you know, like have presentations and stuff in there with organizations from students or, you know, campuses, organizations in general. So this is another part that I kind of want you guys to see, but you can explore on your own. So we have some history along the walls, and you'll see it as you walk throughout the building. So on this wall, we have the story of Virgil Hawkins. You can read about it a little bit, but he was a very notable figure here on campus. And it's definitely important that you read about that history and you see the history that Black students have had to, you know, kind of conquer as we are here on campus. So it's definitely going to be important to hear about that. And then we also, for this mural, we have, sorry, I can't think of the word right now, but we do have some history about these figures on our wall as well, behind you, near the doors, to the patio. If you want to, we can proceed upstairs, or, okay, yeah, we can go upstairs? Okay. You can follow me up the stairs. Excuse me. okay. The balloons, they were popping all night yesterday. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. So as you can see back here, like this little bar area, this is our cafe. So if organizations do come in and they have food that they can pass out, they can come up here and, you know, just have a nice spread. But usually students use it to come up here, study, just hang with friends a little bit. So that's kind of what that serves as. Also around the corner, we do have a living room, sort of say, and then we also have a balcony so students can come in and study there. We also have a conference room right here, so you can come in, have meetings in there. Our Leadership Development Institute, they held interviews in there for their students as well, so that's the use of the space. And then we also have some computer labs back there, and then a meditation room, a quiet room, so to say. I feel like that's pretty much it. I don't want to like give a too specific tour because it's such a big group, so everybody may not be able to see if I'm like guiding it. But you know, feel free to explore, read about the history on the walls. It's very important. Ask me any questions if you have any. I just really want to encourage you to explore it on your own and ask questions. That's the best way to get to know this building, asking questions.
What do you think the significance of having a building like this is for students and the university?
So I think for students, especially Black students, it gives us a safe space to just be. You know, we can just be ourselves on campus. We could come together here. We can have programming here. Just last night, we had our anniversary of the two institutes, so we had food and music, and everybody was just here hanging out. It wasn't formal, it was just really nice to just be around each other, listen to music and stuff. And then also for the university, I think it's significant for things like this, like getting to share our culture and history so everybody can see, a piece of us, a piece of who we are, and seeing the work that we're doing here on campus.
We learned at an earlier stop about the movement to change the name of the Rights Union. Do you know, is there still part of that movement that students would like to change it to the Virgil Hawkins Student Union? Have you heard about that?
So actually I haven't heard about that, so it's interesting that you bring that up.
Might have gone the way of the petitions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was maybe, at one point at least, some students had proposed that. So folks learn about Mr. Hawkins today.
Yeah.
Could I answer that? Could I answer that question?
Yeah.
No. You can speak on
I don't need this. I got to.
Okay.
I'm Steve Noll. I teach history here, and I was on the presidential renaming committee to see if we could rename 3 places on campus: Stephen C. O'Connell Center, because of what happened at Black Thursday; the Rights Union, because of what Sarah Coates talked about with J. Wayne Wrights and his persecution of gay people on campus; and the Smathers Library, because of George Smathers' racist past and his participation in protecting segregation in the United States Senate. It went absolutely nowhere. It went nowhere. The O'Connell Center, we were told, could not be renamed because it was named by the legislature, and in order for it to be renamed, it would have to be changed by the legislature. And the chance of that happening, kind of like the chances of us beating FSU on Saturday night, zero. Zero. The Rights Union is not going to be changed. So the only way that'll happen, again, I think, is from the bottom up with students pushing for that. And I think renaming it after someone like Virgil Hawkins is an important step. So it's up to you guys, because we've tried, and my voice on that committee was, we're here not to give new names, just to see how these names were placed. Okay. So we didn't get very far.
Well, I know throughout my time here, I'm currently a senior. I've only been here for 3 years. But I know throughout my time here, we have had incidents of, I guess you could say, aggression towards Black students. So our Divine Nine plot was recently, it was like, I forgot what they did, but it was damaged. It was badly damaged. And then since I've been here, our sign has been uprooted a few times during my time here as a student. So we've definitely had to deal with that. And the Black Student Union has, made statements just condemning the acts that have been made towards us. So.
Just a little more, because I was here in the history whenever they had to take down the old IBC. And the original proposal from the campus architect, I don't know who that was at the time, and the administration, was to combine La Casita and IBC into one kind of multicultural space. And I think that is one example where the student, very loud, and alumni vocal protests that said that is unacceptable. And it worked. They were just going to put one building here and kind of make it, oh, we'll just put all these people over here. Kind of, that's what it felt like. That's what students said. And they said, no, we need our own spaces, as you said earlier, why it's important. And they did it. So that's one time.
Yeah, definitely. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
So we'll give you like 5 or so minutes to walk around the building and all those different things, ask a few questions of anyone who's spoken, or like a whole point of this too is we have a lot of shared wisdom in this room. And that's really what I believe education, the purpose of it is to like honor and acknowledge each other's wisdom and the piece that we bring. So someone else knows something in this room you don't, and you know something else that they don't. So please ask away of each other.
Yeah, no, I like it. You get to learn about it, like even here in Noll, I was in Miami, I learned it.
Yeah.
There's no reason how are you going to learn it?
No, you learn different pieces if something happens.
Yeah,
And then you might.
But here, like, they have the opportunity.
Yeah, I was glad that something was helpful.
To talk about how students can make a difference, teacher voice. My wife's an elementary school teacher, and when she says teacher's voice, we know what that means. So this room was named nothing until 2020. And now it's named the Enoch Marvin Banks Conference Room. And so students can make a difference in changing. So the question you have is, who is Enoch Marvin Banks and why did you change it? Okay. So you're lucky I didn't put it to you. That's what you said. Yeah. So what question do you have?
Who is Enoch Marvin Banks?
Excellent. Okay. So some of my students, in taking my Florida history class, learned about a professor of history who was here in 1910 and 1911, just after UF started. 1911 is the 50th anniversary of the start of the Civil War. And as a history professor, he wrote an article that was disseminated throughout the country on slavery really was the cause of the Civil War. And OMG, the university and the state of Florida and the newspapers said, we can't have somebody at a southern university talking like that, because we all know slavery didn't matter. And so Enoch Marvin Banks was forced to leave the university, pushed out for his intellectual views on diversity. Not that he really was caring about black lives, but he certainly was trying to open the discussion, not something that white Southerners wanted to talk about. He was pushed out and he died within a year, basically of a broken heart. And so my students decided that they would rename the history department conference room in his honor. And so it had to go through the department, which is tough because some professors said, well, your students didn't do the research. And they came up with a book of sources and everything else, newspaper articles talking about what happened, how he was hounded out of here. And then it had to go to the college and everything else, and we got it changed. So it is now named in his honor. Every time we meet in this room, we understand that what we say matters, and how students react to it matters as well. So what this means to me is that you guys can make a difference, because I didn't propose it, they proposed it. Other professors didn't propose it, students proposed it, and for 2 years, they pushed. There's a person who's in graduate school now who started this campaign when she was a freshman. So it took 3 years to get that damn little sign up there. And at some level, does it matter? Not really, because you guys don't come to this building. But it really matters, because students did it. And if they can change this name, they can work on other changes too, like changing the name of the Wrights, like changing the name of the Odo, like changing the name of Smathers, or anything else you want to happen. So it's up to you guys. So let's go eat.
Yeah. In case people are leaving, since it is 6, just wanted to make a few notes on the way out. Sonai is going to be kindly, but like really directly, standing with a QR code for a quick post survey. That if you could just do before you like get home or on your way, in the few questions, because we want to continue to keep that. We want to continue this, and so we want to know whether it matters or not, and what would be helpful for you all. So it's short, but it's meaningful. It's actually a part of change. Is collecting information. So no guilt there. And then I also want to note that the world is really changed by people who show up, right? So even showing up tonight on a week you may be stressed, or coming back and getting your rhythm going is really important, and we find it valuable. And we also want everyone to feel like they can find their home at UF and in Gainesville. And so sometimes it is meeting people outside of our normal spheres for that. And so we hope you keep doing that. If you did not register for tonight, like no big deal, but if you come find me and give me your email, because we're gonna send out resources, and there's so many spaces on campus that we did not touch on. We mentioned a few things about the Wrights. A lot of you hopefully know pieces about Turlington, or even how Turlington continues to be used in terms of free speech. Tigert, the Levine Law School, and the Native American burial mound that's there. And those are literally just a few. So we want to be able to share those resources with you all. So we are going to head to Pugh Hall, get some food, mingle with each other, and we really appreciate your presence. Thanks. Yeah, ask kind of. Yeah. All depends on tell me everything.
If I don't have restrictions to normal pizza, do you think there's enough normal pizza?
Yeah.
Like not normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Common pizza. You said to find you. We did not.
Yep, and that it's now. Because I think that's the thing we don't want it to be all about. Like we do, but we do need to know more about UF's history that is removed, the students don't know, but also.
Yeah, you know how this is like students, like their students have been very tired, sick, done,
Yeah.
This is a really good group.
Yeah, no, I like it. You get to learn about this, like even.
There are gluten-free options right at the end. Andrew says that
Are you good? Okay. Smile. Okay. This one is
we're going to do great costumes. So you know. Oh, wait, one more. Sorry, an official one. An official one. Unofficial. Wait, have a good night. I give you an official one. Oh. Sorry. No, look at
1, 2, 3.
It was honest with you all.
I had a moment, I swear, where I was like, in 30 years, it's going to be the 300th walk.